Welcome to another edition of a hallway hangout with the FSE Outreach program. I'm joined by a very lovely crew of familiar faces, for me at least. We are chatting about phase two, wrapping up phase two, and some of the work being done to update a tracking issue, and also just lots of PRs being done around kind of the bigger milestones for wrapping up phase two. Thanks for joining. We just are kicking off. I'm going to drop a link, and then I'm also going to share my screen. And this is the issue that I'm talking about. So this is kind of the main overview issue that a lot of folks have gathered around and done a lot of work to update. Let me share my screen while we're talking about it. I also have notes if there's anything, questions people have, and all that sort of stuff. At a high level, these are the various main tasks. And last week, so this is actually slightly out of date because this one just closed, I think, yesterday. This is kind of the status update that we have. So of the work that's been completed, technically you can say 2 now, but as of last week, 1 of mine was completed, 9 has dev work underway, like actively. 3 are still in design stage. 3 have developers assigned, but it hasn't been started yet. 1, originally there were 3 that were stuck, that were like shaking loose. There's 1 remaining one that I'm trying to follow up to get unstuck. And 11 are I'm defining as stuck, either due to a problem, like we don't know how to proceed, or it's been a lapse of 14 plus days, which could mean someone could pick it up. So this is a very loose category, which is why there's so many in here. But that's just like a brief snapshot of kind of where we're at. And then looking at the issue itself, these are obviously like the top main tasks, but there's a ton of other work happening in the project around themes. There's a lot of stuff with navigation block that's not listed here. So I share this because this is one of a lot of work that's happening. It's not all the work that's happening. And so I want to make that clear that these are just the tasks that folks are digging into to wrap up aspects of phase 2. But it's not the entirety of the work being done in the project. It's just a very focused effort. So of the list, I was going to start pulling through and mainly just wanted to chat about many of these. Some are probably really familiar. Like I think there's the, colorize to put parts and reusable blocks in the UI. Like that one comes up a lot in the outreach program. Some are probably less familiar. Like this one I've been digging into more. But I wasn't sure if there was anything that you all, at a glance, looking at this, would want to dive into. And if not, I can just open one and go. I might just open one and go. This is a huge issue. It's like this, to me, this is like probably the meatier one right now, is this browse mode, combined with the splitting of the tools. But so introduce browser and surface main navigation. This basically reimagines a lot of the general experience of using the site editor. So even like entering it. So this is kind of a brief demo. So you have everything from, let's see, there's a chat. Aha, the syntax is me. I'll open that one too. Ah, yes. We'll look at that one too. And yeah, feel free to drop them in the chat and we can go through them. Yeah, it just is looking at different ways of actually experiencing and navigating between the editor, including things like, I know one of the things that's come up a lot, feedback is around being able to add posts and pages, and also just generally view your site to kind of go between editing flows. So this is a long, I'm gonna scroll down to the bottom because this gets into a lot of different stuff. And this is kind of the latest of where we've landed. And Riyadh, why is that closed? Oh, yeah, this is what I need. The fun of GitHub. This is what's being worked on practically. So what we were just looking at was kind of an early idea. And just to explain what's happening here, it's like someone's entering the editor. It's called design, first of all, rather than the editor. And then once you open it, you're met with having this open along with an edit button. And it kind of, this looks like a preview of your site that you can click through. So that's like you can go to different pages and look at different things, different categories. And browse your site. So this has been called like browse mode, which is kind of misleading because it's actually restructuring how content can be accessed. Like I don't necessarily think of it as a new mode you can turn on and off, kind of like distraction-free mode. Paul says, by the way, I would like the site name to be a link to the front end example. So the Pizza Planet links to the front end. Yeah.
Yeah, because we see Pizza Planet there, and we're kind of used to seeing that in the sidebar, the site name. When we click the site name, it usually goes to the front end.
So you're thinking if you clicked on this, it would open up a
No,
new link?
in the black area on the left.
Oh, here.
Click that. Yeah.
Interesting. Hold on.
Like the toggle between dashboard and home icons that flip.
It's kind of like what we have in the black sidebar today. When you click the site title up in the top, and when you just click it, it usually goes to the front end. So it's just kind of, I would say, the same thing.
Yeah, I don't actually know because this is just a prototype. I don't actually know what that is clickable. But you can see.
Yeah, I'll just add a comment in there later on. So
yeah. But this obviously would change things drastically. I'm paying a lot of attention to this, obviously, because I want to test it as soon as possible. And I think it could be pretty transformative to actually get access to all this sort of stuff. Let's see.
To me, it certainly gives the site editor more of like an app experience. Which is a good thing. I was interested. I was curious about that top in that prototype. The little top when they click toggle between pages. It did make me think of like it almost looked like a browser's URL bar.
Like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't love that. I'm not gonna lie. I find that to be kind of confusing where I'm like, oh, what is, I mean, I think once you realize what it is, it makes more sense. But it's a pretty unique interaction. Like it kind of breaks some things that I would think of.
I'm gonna just put the request in there for accessibility thinking as we're doing all of this, that it's heavily tested with screen readers, especially because I see a lot of panels that just pop and fly, more and more coming, which is fine as long as it's accessible.
Yeah, this is flagged for the accessibility team. I flagged it for them, I think, like 2 weeks ago. And so this is part of what's being discussed right now. And I got really good feedback from Alex Stein, who's an accessibility team member, around that needs to be thought of at the design stage. So I think there might be some tweaking that needs to be done, because I agree with that. And right now, where is it? Yeah, because like part of what between the panels opening and the switching in and out, that's definitely come up as a concern. And Rich asks, is the idea that pages would be editable via the block editor from here? And yes, like ideally in time, that is exactly what you could have access to as well. So it's kind of confusing because there's a number of different efforts that are slowly, it's like exposing this, like changing the interaction here. But in time, imagine you could use something like this and edit both your content and your templates. So like maybe, I think it's, where is it? Yeah, I think it's where there's like the library. So like having different ways of sections where it's like, maybe it's called library in order to access templates. And then maybe you have something that's content and you can access content that way. Or as you're going through and actually clicking, like using this search bar and like clicking on something that's like the about page, you could then click on that and select edit in order to just start editing directly on the contact page. We'll see though, because a lot of this depends on like, how do we communicate the global context of a lot of these things. One thing that makes me excited is around style variations, being able to actually see the changes. Because right now it's like you're met with like a very limited view, where if you could actually like browse around your site or look at how different things are with ease, I think that could go a long way.
One thing I kind of looked at when I redid my acting portfolio website with full site editing was, for instance, clicking Pizza Planet and just kind of jumping to one of the other most used templates instead of having to go to templates and then select another template. It's kind of like a quick mode to go into another template. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I kind of missed having an easier, quicker way to jump between templates.
Yeah, right now it's pretty like not fragmented, but sectioned out. Yeah. Yeah, keep an eye. This PR is moving seemingly pretty quick. I mean, it's been open for 19 days, but I think hopefully we'll get something in place and then can test it and at least get some initial feedback. Kind of same with like the distraction-free mode, which is coming out in the next Gutenberg release, I think today. If it's not out already today, I've been in calls all morning. But this ties in really nicely with this global styles one as well. When thinking about how to see the changes across your entire site. So this one's looking at a way to view basically all the different styles and like having it be interactive. So in this case, let me zoom in. I always forget when I'm recording these things, how difficult it is to see. Or maybe I can just do, nope, it's not what I want. No, that is what I wanted. There we go. So having ways to, when you're changing the styles, to actually see how it impacts the entire site. Because like the other day, for example, I was testing something with 2023 and was changing, went to blocks and was changing an individual block when I realized that the block itself was not on the page that I was editing. And I was like, oh, I have no idea what I'm actually changing here. So I think having ways that we can see this up front would be huge. So that people are able to actually make the changes that they want where they want. I'm curious with these different, like the fact that widgets is in here is funny to me. Maybe it's a holdover from classic themes, but. Was there anything about this that caught your attention? Dan?
Well, I have kind of two observations. I mean, it's something, I mean, I've been pushing kind of for like a style guide type of thing for a while, and I think this falls easily in there. But with that being said, I feel like, and even with the previous ticket, I'm curious, I feel like there's a few different modes that I don't even fully understand in context, especially alone just in the site editor itself, not even like block editor and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's more of a reminder for myself, but I'd like to really get my head around those different modes and how they relate or don't relate.
Yeah.
Like when does the left sidebar come into play and when does the right, I mean, I kind of have some idea of, being in there, but like, it doesn't make sense when they come into play and currently and where that path might go. Yeah, I'm curious. I'll be curious to see where that goes. And
yeah, that information architecture piece is huge too. Like for example, this design is showing style still over here, but then I'm pretty sure if you look at, browse mode, like it says like browse styles over here, it's like, wait a sec.
yeah.
And I think ultimately at the end of the day, what they're imagining is like, this would be easy to port over here. And in my mind, I really want to get styles out of, I hate how close it is to block settings. It's driving me nuts. I think it confuses people. So I personally would like to see that popped right on over.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, I just like got access to like the WordPress design library, so I don't even consider myself really onboarded with the design team, and maybe Rich might have some insight, but like I feel like it would be cool to have, and it might already be the case that, in that file somewhere, it just kind of shows like best practices of when these things of like what would be considered to go kind of in the left sidebar versus the right, and that might be a conversation that kind of, maybe it's a critical point right now to kind of have that conversation around some of these pieces.
Yeah, that's a great call out, because I do think you're right. I do think we're reaching a point of like, one, reimagining the entrance point to the site editor. It's like, what do you see when you first land? And then also that right versus left. And going even deeper, it's like, you know, then you get into splitting. So like, what does that look like? Even if you split between right and left, like how are we getting more nuance in the tooling itself? In my mind, and like, in, you know, this visual has styles over here. So like each, you know, everyone's kind of doing designs of the times. Like this was back in April.
Yeah.
So I think this is part of why, when thinking about this phase 2 customization, part of why this work is trying to be done concurrently is to put like to kind of get on the same page and like move in a bit more of a same direction, because a lot of these pieces do interconnect, as you're pointing out.
Question for languages that are right to left, does that impact where they're expecting some of these menus to pop out from? I mean, it would impact the alignment of the text, but I haven't really considered RTL languages. How much of things do they want mirrored too?
Say more. Like, because in my mind, it would just be flipped. Like, what, I'm curious what you
I don't like, I'm wondering if like say that we're moving the global styles out of the same area where the block settings go. Would they want all of the menus also flipped, or just the language within the menu aligned?
Like, in my mind, it would be fully moved for some reason. I can't answer why. I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like,
right. I'm curious if we have, like, I think that would be a question to ask someone that's native RTL.
Yeah, I think there's also best practices there too, like that they're already following for implementing some of these stuff originally. I remember seeing an issue around an RTL issue a couple months ago that someone was like, oh, it needs to be in this package for da 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 da, and I was like, no, you know, like, yeah, that's a good call out though. I'll make sure that's recapped in the notes. Yeah, this is also an interesting one, is like splitting this apart even more, which I've seen some plugins do. I'm curious if we can learn from them as well. And tied to this, where is it? Nope. There we go. This is kind of a fun one that I don't know how I feel about. It's very brief, but it's basically saying, what about when you're editing a block in the various editors, if there's a way to push the style, like you create something you really like, to make it global and to push it to global styles.
That is cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and even reverse, I feel like that. Or no, that makes sense. Because I was thinking around the search block earlier, because the search block is made up of field and a button, and it ideally, you know, it would be a matter, because right now the complexity of using the search block is you're kind of altering the whole form. But in theory, you should be updating like the button styles. And I think my next mental step was, okay, how would you do that? But how would you push that? Say you make the search button red and you want to say apply to all buttons for the site. You know, that kind of would be great to have a setting kind of like in the sidebar for when you're modifying the search button to say push globally or something like that.
Yeah, and that's literally, it's like, what if this were in the, isn't that, you know, like, yeah, it's completely, like, these are different forms of what that would look like.
Yeah, the copy and paste styles thing, I think it's obviously more of an advanced feature, but something that would be pretty handy. The key piece here, though, which is interesting, is that it inherently will require, it's not like any style attribute for a custom block. It would be, you know, style supported within global styles, which is an interesting approach because it will subtly start pushing more custom block developers to adopt, you know, core architecture when it comes to global styles, making sure that their blocks are compatible with global styles, or else these buttons aren't going to work, you know. So
there's also, I ran into like, I think I opened an issue for it. I did. I ran into an issue the other day that relates to this, I promise. Lord have mercy, I forget sometimes how many issues. 100, I'm like 145 issues. I gotta triage my own stuff. That cannot be right. But I found like I started a brand new site, like 6.1 RC2, TT3, did nothing. All I did was messing. I was just messing with style variations, and I found a style variation I liked, and then I went to just mess with the headings. Like I was like, great, I'm just gonna change it. So in my mind, you know, I just have created a new site. All I want to do is manage the headings, and I got into this really long, it's summarized on this issue, but conversation, because like the appearance stuff wasn't updating, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, this is really annoying. And there's a couple things at play. One is like displaying options that are actually available with that font. And then the other thing though, that I didn't pick up on is like, imagine, this is just me obnoxiously doing this for like a minute straight. Imagine that like, this is a pattern, and the pattern has very specific styles. So it wants it to be bold. Global styles actually has low specificity. So like, it won't override that. And I was like, you mean to tell me, like, I had this moment where I was like, I didn't even realize it, even though I'm knee deep in this work. I was like, wait a sec. So when it comes to like all this relating back to like making it possible to push back, I wonder how well this would work technically, considering this is meant to be pretty low. If the expectation is, oh, I'm going to push this to global styles, it'll update everywhere. Will it actually, you know, like, it's like, at what point, how would that actually work? Because that kind of goes against some of the specificity issues that are coming up.
Yeah, it's one of those things where and it also requires everything to work properly. It requires the site to be built in a certain way. You know, if you have a theme that's hard coding styles everywhere, you know, suddenly global styles aren't very effective. So it's definitely a paradigm shift that we're running into all over the place. So I do have then we're kind of straying into this. And I think that when it comes to like global styles and, you know, the site editor, while that's really great, and obviously the direction we want to move into, I think that thinking about how different users interact with sites, if they're admins versus editors versus authors, that sort of thing, like editors and authors are going to see a lot of this stuff. One of the things that I would love to see is when we're talking about different view modes, we should get rid of the template editor from the posting page. You know, the
yes, yeah.
Like, if we're gonna let's consolidate everything into the site editor, and that's where it lives. Like, because I got a question. We were dealing with an issue yesterday in triage where someone was like, "There's a bug. I can't edit global styles inside of the template editor." And then it's like, well, it's actually not actually part of the site editor, and you got to go to the site. It's like, oh. So
with that in mind, there are, I think, about a lot of the third-party plugins that are not fully FSE at this time, and the implications that may have, because if you have a custom post type that's generated by the third-party plugin that has template editing enabled, I haven't poked at this to test it, but my thinking here is that end user has a third-party plugin that has a custom post type that they would like to modify the template, but they don't have a theme that is global styles FSE completely there yet. What happens at that point? That's a lot of our marketplace, I think.
Wait, say this again. So like, I'm thinking of like Sensei has something like this. We've done this. So they have like a plugin has a custom template. Yeah, you should still be able to access, like, they would have to basically enable it for that specific template from what I've seen. Like, there are ways of like Sensei has a version of this. I wish I could bring up the code right now. I was just talking to them about that, where it's like, if someone doesn't want to use a block theme for their specific setup, they still allow this like learning mode to be used and to have access to the templates. And this also is like exposing.
I'm thinking of testing this with the events calendar, but I'm not going to have time until after release, just for.
Yeah, because I know WooCommerce also ran into aspects of this as well. And then this ties into, conversely, like, how can you expose styles UI for classic themes? Like, what would that look like as like a gradual adoption pathway? So like, rather than needing access to the full site editor, what would it look like to just give users like a pared down version of
I'm a little confused. Are we talking about allowing people to edit templates without actually in themes that don't have access to the site editor?
It's just the template editor. Yeah, you can add template editor support. Yeah, but then you don't have access to the entire experience, which I think is fine.
That's an interesting approach.
It's the approach of a lot of third-party plugins with many clients that are the end client is not yet on a block theme. And so how do they allow that onboarding towards block themes and empower users to modify the template used often in a custom post type, and give them that flexibility that we have tooling available for, but yet also make way if they don't have a block theme for it.
So they're building block templates without actually.
Yeah, it's that bridge between it as we're enabling like access to template parts in classic themes now with this release. It's that same kind of idea of like, when I worked at the events calendar, we had a lot of people that were using, they were one of the first to market as a plugin to have Gutenberg enabled. And then the layout, if you enabled blocks, and it's still a toggle that I believe you have to tell it to turn, like you have to go into settings in the events calendar and turn it on for that block option to be available. Otherwise, it's kind of a classic experience on that custom post type. So you enable the blocks. Then what we found is that a lot of customers that were also using Beaver Builder preferred to use Beaver Builder's method of overhauling the templates because there wasn't a clean way yet with the block editor to say, I don't like the layout of the template you gave me for this event custom post type. I want to move where the title and the featured image and the things are on this layout. And so give me a way to do that. And there wasn't a really good experience for users to do that outside of going to yet another, an additional third, fourth party, et cetera, now to change that custom post types layout. So the template editor would be an option for some situations like that. But again, have to keep in mind, what if the user is not on a block theme? They could still use the block editor interface for the templates, but they couldn't use the site editor for the templates. Yeah.
I think this is like WooCommerce has code that I think this is it. I quickly was just like trying to find where I dropped this. And I'm pretty sure this is like how they handle exactly what you're describing. And I've sent it to the folks at Events Calendar before. Because this is a cool way to open up more customization options for plugins and to get people used to like thinking about templates and having more control. But obviously it also is strange that like, styles is not there. So what could it look like to expose styles? Or if we got rid of this template editor and consolidated things, which I do think makes sense, what then happens to this pathway? How do we ensure that that is also locked down appropriately if people have looked into it? So, but yeah, for all the nerds out there, I will add this.
Or maybe it's something where if you are using a full site editing theme, like it bumps you to the site edit.
Yeah, so that's what happens with WooCommerce right now. That's what happens with WooCommerce right now. Is like if you're using a block theme, there are certain templates that are exposed inherently, and then I'm pretty sure if you're using a classic theme, it exposes them to the templates. I honestly haven't tested this in like 6 months. Like it's been like I'm still so focused on like the core experience to begin with. But yeah, Darren, you say we're risking having a ton of editors, or will they be modes? But the terminology will get murky probably as possible in new context. Yep, there's the site editor, template editor, block editor, pattern editor. Yeah, reusable blocks gets added in there. That's where some of the explorations around like having a library and having it be like library, patterns, templates, like how can we really scale it down in that navigation component to handle the complexity, but also not push the complexity onto users, because ultimately they don't need to know this stuff. Like, I think the biggest distinction you need to know is like, what is global, what is local, and like understanding that, whether you're dealing with patterns versus template parts, or more is really, I think this is on here as well. There's like a, yeah, let's see. Yeah, there's a lot to figure out with this stuff. Like, yeah, this is what I was, like back in the day, I don't know if y'all remember this, in like the first call for testing, we had this, it was called the navigation component, which is a fun name. And it had access to content and everything like that. And it was much easier to switch between.
This was like 5.8 days, right?
Yeah, this is a long time ago.
This was we're getting ready for 5.9. Yeah, I remember this because I was like, because you could navigate and do all sorts of stuff that you can't do now. And then
yeah, they really pared it down. Yeah. Which I think was the right decision, considering. But yeah, I definitely, you would not believe how much documentation I prepared that was around this stuff, and then it got removed, and I was like, cool. Like,
I remember that. Getting ready for 5.9 was a wild time.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. But yeah, this is also, it's like, how do you reintroduce content editing? And this is this is the library thing I was kind of mentioning. So product templates could be like WooCommerce. Like, you could have like a plugin could like hook into this, which is kind of cool. Jay, the designer, used to work on WooCommerce. So
use of the word library makes me want again to somehow see the media library get the FSE treatment. And just, I don't know, the word library in there screams like, what else do we call a library that's visible?
Yeah, there is like an interesting, for the inserter, this is one of the issues, is like, it'd be nice to start exploring a media tab for easy access to your library, and then as well as integrating with Openverse. So that kind of lightly, I know it doesn't do the FSC treatment, but I know we previously did like an exploration around media and site building and having really good images and easy ways to access good images is a huge part of this. And so this is kind of an interesting, I mean, it's very rudimentary right now, but you can see this kind of integration. I think there's a video, maybe not. No, I'm not gonna open that. I love seeing this, just a side note. But yeah, there's some cool like looks for some of this stuff, because I agree, like, we definitely need to have better integration. That is jarring to me. That yellow. Whew.
Yeah. I have it turned on through Jetpack in one of my sites, and I just see like, what are my multiple options of bringing in, I think Jetpack, this is what, Pexels and a few things there. That doesn't bother me. It's like, do you want to pull it in from your media library or Openverse or whatever? But then seeing the splash page for Openverse might be a bit.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa, too much yellow.
Yeah, that's like some of the themes and or plugins that their styles in the admin dashboard are so vastly different from the rest of our dashboards that it gets weird.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, even involving the inserter is also kind of, I've been keenly following a lot of this stuff too, of like how to scale this up. But yeah, I like this. Unified search has a lot of complexities. I'm not sure you should be doing, like, seeing results from your library and from other people can be a very off-putting experience. I can already hear my dad calling me being like, there's other people's images. Am I like, you know, like, why is this in the inserter? How do I get rid of this? Am I hacked? Like, you know, it's like, oh no.
That actually brings up something I wanted to talk about real quick, is with route search. One of the things I found, like in the site editor, we switched it over. So when you search in the site editor, like in like the slash insert or whatever, it defaults to patterns, which
Yeah.
is fine, but it's also really tough when you're trying to insert a block because it always tries to give you a pattern, which is a little tough. So I think like identifying how we search is an interesting one.
Yes.
There.
Where this came up. Nope.
I totally agree. I met that when I was working on the site, and just it did not want to insert a block. I could write out heading.
Yeah, there's no way to see
still
block.
didn't give me the heading block. They were just showing patterns.
I think, Paul, this is your video that I quoted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I think I remember. Yeah, Paul, this is exactly. Yeah, this would be a great issue to comment on. I probably could improve this title. Because yeah, it's like one, it still says, I think this got fixed, the plus button saying add block, maybe not. But I agree. There's literally no way to see, like, let's see if we can, I'll turn the audio off, but yeah, you went through a whole flow where you literally were trying everything to find a block and you couldn't.
Right.
You have to type the whole thing in, or maybe that didn't even work. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
I understand like the idea to like kind of prioritize patterns, but at the same time, it's a little bit over aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky too if it works one way in the block editor and the other way in the site editor. It doesn't. We've already learned it one way. It's hard to have the two different functions.
Oh, it looks like this works for some, but not others. That's interesting. Yeah. This would be, I'll note, I'll like leave a comment. And leave a comment later.
Unlikely to happen, but it could be cool to, where there's a user preference to start on blocks or start on patterns.
Ooh. Oh, I like that. User preference. Interesting. Yeah, like I mean, now we're like another mode. Like it's like, that is interesting though. Because I could see myself like honestly just using patterns most of the time. If I found like a theme that I really like the patterns for, I just would be like, especially for like when I'm quickly building something, I like turn on the preference for list view open by default, and I'd probably just go wild with patterns. And then when I was done, I'd probably turn it off.
Yeah, maybe it is user preference because I'm the other way around. So like it would make sense as a user preference for sure.
Let's make it the default. I'm just doing
I like having both, having the blocks in the top or patterns in the top of blocks below or something like that. It was one of the screenshots here or one of the mock-ups. It at least gives the option of just kind of seeing both solutions.
Yes. Where was that? I think I lost it.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. But at least seeing both, when you start to write something, you get some patterns and you get some
here.
Some the possible blocks below it.
Yeah, like this is a good example actually where in this case, blocks are prioritized. In this one, this is the title stuff is supposed to represent patterns.
I was thinking in page inserter.
Like the quick inserter?
Yeah, in page.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that actually is a good low-hanging improvement. I'm gonna note this for later. Like
to speak to Damon's comment about slash inserter, we need a pattern slash inserter. I think that's been mentioned before. That's not a new issue, but you could just type slash pattern and it would open up the pattern model.
Oh, that's interesting.
Where is this? Let's make sure. I'll follow up on that later. I feel like
I've seen people talking about it. I'm not sure it's an exact issue, but it would be.
Yeah, I'll make sure something is open with that. This is
it wouldn't even be hard to do because you just have it trigger the pattern modal and just do /pattern and it opens up the modal and you can insert.
Yeah, I think that'd be really neat. This also ties into the zoomed out view in many ways. Because I know that's a big part of this is that like you're working on the pattern level only.
Yeah, where's the thing about like the content? There's like context around patterns. I thought I saw that somewhere in one of Matthias's posts. Like you insert a pattern and like there's like context around it because normally when you insert a pattern, like there's no more context. It's just blocks on a page. There was like something about like maintaining context around an inserted pattern.
Say more. Maintaining context.
I
can't find it. Yeah.
Nah, yeah. There was a mock-up of Matthias he had. Maybe I'll just go through his Twitter and see if I can find
it. Okay, I'll just my thoughts on that is that when I insert a pattern is maybe I want to check out some design suggestions, but if I already have kind of like a simple design in the back of my mind, I would just insert a lot of blocks to add some content, images, headings, and kind of regular stuff. And then suddenly, if I want to check out patterns, that would be a totally another design aspect of it. So there's kind of like two different things going on here. One thing is just kind of the simple layout with block information, and the other is actually designing more of the design. So they're kind of like two mindsets, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. I like that, the two mindsets. It's also like the discoverability of a lot of this stuff. Like one of the things I like about the zoomed out view is like they're talking about putting it in a invoking it in very specific situations, which I think makes a lot of sense. So like part of it is like you're describing like opting into something and turning something on and off in order to have these different modes. And it's like, what if it was just there? Like you knew when you were like doing a certain action, you didn't have to necessarily turn something on. This is how I find issues, is looking at very specific.
It's kind of like going into the design mode when you more focus on patterns and less on blocks, and then one goes more into kind of like the writing mode when it adds paragraphs, headings, or maybe some images, quotes, whatever. I don't know. Of course, there's a lot of overlap here, but there's just the different things going on.
Yeah. For those of you who are just joining, we're just talking. We've gone into a deep rabbit hole of randomness, talking about some of these issues and patterns versus when you want to use blocks and how the inserter works and the varying modes that are coming out between browse mode, and it's more of a re-architecting of the site editor experience and the zoomed out mode. So if anything doesn't make sense, feel free to interrupt. Let me go back to the original phase two. I want to be mindful of time. We have in theory about 12 minutes left. And so from this list, let's see, I see the chat. Yeah. I feel like I could have this issue tattooed on me at this point. I feel like I look at it every day. Which, speaking of, this is regularly updated too. Like some issues I know, overview issues are not necessarily maintained in the same way. And this one, by design, is maintained. Going to be maintained, I think, until it's completed. But there anything on here, looking at this lovely list, I'll scroll down a little bit more in case. Is there anything else that folks wanted to make sure there was time to talk about?
I mean, I think that the thing that community is clamoring about is, responsive styling. And I know that we've been moving more towards the direction of, instead of like adding toggles for like, this is what it should look like on mobile. This is what, it's much more of a holistic approach, but working around improving that, I think it's a big one.
Yeah, and I feel like the navigation block as well, but that's obviously on the radar.
Yeah.
I'd triple that for the navigation.
This may just be a this might be a weird make thing, but I am having a really challenging time with our team meeting notes of all the things, because of the list block. Because we're running, it does strange things with if I want to copy over last week's thing and then I delete one line, it like resets numbering and
please report that. Yeah, because
yes.
that's like interesting. Okay.
I'll record myself next time I'm up for writing but I don't see the list block and the progress for that one. That's not as big of a deal to me though as navigation needs loving.
Navigation.
And Corey, are you talking about the new list block?
Yeah, because we're running bleeding edge on .org.
Yeah, I would love to get some, like, I know Ella, who helped implement that, would love feedback there. She's actively iterating a lot of that stuff. So that is definitely
and easy to give access to where the problem was happening.
I'll quickly note this one, since unless someone has one that they really want to talk about. I'm like obsessed with this right now because like I think I had some change blindness around the pattern categories where I just was like, this is fine, and then no, it's not. Like this, all of these need to be reimagined, and this kind of came up. One of the features that got pulled from 6.1, unfortunately, was the bundled header and footer patterns. So we already have something for 6.2 to look forward to. And one of the things that came up was this headers category, which if we're going to bundle headers and footers, you know, what does this actually look like, and how do we reimagine it? Can we call something banners? And it kind of just opened up a whole conversation around renaming things. And query is probably one of the most common things people are going to use and want to use for patterns, especially since the query loop is pretty complex. And to have something that's, you know, you want to show your posts or your products or whatever with ease, and having it be such a technical name and so confusing when patterns are meant to make it easier is really ironic.
Is there any, or where was it decided? I feel like the loop was such a friendly term and like really part of like old school WordPress, and query, especially for like Americans, is like, what is this word? We don't even know what this word is. So like, I mean, developers do, but like regular people are like, query, what are you, British? I feel like the loop makes sense to people because it like loops through. And was that a decision that was made somewhere, or is that, you know, I know I've talked a lot in various threads about language, but this is one of those places that I think like, you know, it just got kind of like named that and then started calling that, and then like,
yeah, I can share some historical context, and this is not like, I don't know everything, but I do remember when this was like, you were going to introduce it. I think it was like, well, I guess maybe it was 5.9. So originally the query loop block has always been designed to be more of a theme author developer advanced feature. And what end users were going to be exposed to were variations of the query loop block. So imagine you have like a post list block that's powered by the query loop. And so maybe some controls are exposed, but not all of them. And so you have some like more advanced controls, but at the end of the day, you're not like going in and messing with the query loop. And then same thing with patterns. Like imagine you're just relying on patterns to like display your posts. It works perfectly. Someone's not having to get into the settings. Now, you start there, query loop block, great, we'll release it. It'll be more advanced until we can get to the other stuff. It's the getting to the other stuff part that I don't think happened. And so now we have things like patterns listed as query loop patterns or query patterns. So that's kind of like,
there's no middle ground between like the loop and people.
I don't think the loop was ever considered, to be honest. I don't really know the naming of that. Yeah, I can't speak to that. That actually is like, I don't know if anyone else on this call can, but that's, to me, I think it was always going to be query loop or like, you know, post. I think now they're looking at posts, like you can see right here. It's like, how do we simplify this? So yeah, there wasn't a, like, if you have the query loop block, the post list block, there wasn't a middle ground that's been like explored. That's correct.
Yeah, it'd be nice if it was like products, posts, page, you know, like the actual things that people are looking for, and just kind of abstract away from query loop everything and just
well, for all your custom post types, ideally, right? You could just have one, or in the post loop, it would just allow you to do all your custom post types and they're all there. And you could just, then it's easy.
One of the things I noticed, which this is not it's just a thing that I want people to know about. So if you register a custom taxonomy now, WordPress will automatically create a block for that. And I don't know how that got missed in as a banner thing, but it's a super important thing. You usually have to make that yourself as a variation of the terms block. But now you just register a custom taxonomy for your custom post type and it's already there. So there could be things like that where we're, detecting custom post types and making that readily available.
Yeah, make it, that would just remove that pain point.
Where was that? This was recent.
I discovered it because I had built a whole bunch of my own custom ones. And then I'm like, why are there two? I'm like, oh, WordPress is making this for me. How nice.
Yeah, it's somewhere it's somewhere around here. I don't know. It's definitely this year. Yeah, I can't find it right now.
This place is just straight up the Gutenberg GitHub repository, the best place to so I've been experimenting with the latest stuff, and sorry, I don't have my microphone here, so you probably can't hear me. I've been experimenting with the latest stuff, and I've run into some things that I usually think it's me and not a bug, but in these cases I'm like, no, it's a bug. This is totally a bug, and I want to report it, but I'm just I don't want to create duplicate tickets, and I'm just just duplicate ticket it.
Do it. Nick and I are the co-editor triage leads for 6.1. So first of all, it's great when there's duplicates because you're cool, everyone's upset about this and 5 people have found it. This means you probably need to up it in priority.
I've always if you find a ticket and it's just exhausting.
Yeah, if you have time,
just create it. It doesn't matter if it's a duplicate. We'll take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd much rather hear it 5 times than not hear it. Because someone was oh, I don't want to be annoying. Or honestly, I also welcome. This is obviously not scalable, but sometimes if there's a really messy, you can't even figure out how to actually report it, I'm always happy to talk through that kind of stuff. And kind of get more nuanced, oh, that's by design, or oh, this is ties into this, future thing that's going to be solved. So if there's ever I think all of us on this call can probably.
Yeah, and if there's is this kind of is this just me question? Feel free to ping us, double check that it is an actual issue as well. So.
Yeah, I'm literally using the most vanilla install. I'm not even trying to do anything fancy. And I was what is happening here? This is a bug. I never even get to that point because I'm always oh, I'll just do it some other way. But yeah, it's fun with it.
No, I'm glad. Thanks for testing and wanting to report issues, because we definitely need that. Nick and I had many conversations around that. All right, we have 2 minutes left. I'll add just briefly what's to come with the outreach program. I'm working on another call for testing. I want to get 6.1 out the door. And one of the things we talked about previously that we did was usability testing. And when I originally did usability testing a couple months ago, someone brought up, can't remember who, it was not me, brought up doing usability testing right after a release in order to get some good feedback. So I'm toying with what that might look like. And I mentioned this before we started recording, but I actually have to have hand surgery and I'm seeing a surgeon tomorrow. So I don't know when it's happening, but depending on that, it will impact what I can do and what the program can do. And I'm trying to line up some backup plans. So ideally, stay tuned for hopefully usability testing is the ideal. Otherwise, a regular call for testing should be coming up post 6.1 release. I just am trying to give myself buffer room, frankly, and to make sure honestly testing happens for 6.1 because that's definitely the most important right now. But otherwise,
and can you do voice to text?
I probably can, but to be honest, I also want to take time off. I live by myself, so I don't want to. It's my dominant hand, and I don't want to mess with the hand that I'm gonna have to have the rest of my life, unfortunately. Unless you can build a Gutenberg block hand that I can
Well, it's nice to just kind of step away and just take the break.
Yeah, I think between the pain meds and
I think you deserve some
everyday
time
life
off.
being
man.
hard.
Yeah, I was gonna go.
We
I thought
all
you were
need
gonna
it.
say
That's
you
not gonna be
deserve
fun.
it, and I was like, I think you can finish that. You definitely
Yeah,
deserve
yeah.
it. It's been a bit
Yeah.
of a marathon, just a smidge.
Yeah, it's just I mainly don't. It's honestly just the hand thing for the rest of my life, but I won't spiral out with you all about that. My friends have been hearing me. What if I can't type? But yeah, no, I do think at a certain point, I actually also, we were talking about this earlier, like digging into more accessibility stuff. I think it's a great opportunity to, dig into some of that more, some of the more complex issues coming up from an accessibility perspective. I think would be really cool. While I literally will not be able to do anything else. So we'll see. But yeah, stay tuned and thank you all for joining this. I hope it was helpful. And I feel like we hardly scratched the surface. So I might run another one of these next week. Especially once 6.1 lands, we can talk about where things are there and then maybe look at some of these other issues and talk about what it'll solve. But
Quick question before you go. Is there a what is the best place for 6.1 feedback after launch?
There's like forums in the let me pull up the issue. Hold on.
I just want to put that out there for anyone, when people are complaining on Twitter. I want to be like, don't tell that.
Either you can do track, you can do GitHub, like you can do forums. I know, so after a release goes out, there is like they monitor the forums for issues coming in and people will like open up issues in track. So if someone doesn't want to do track, there is a forum you can go and like just
It'd be
post
cool if there was
forums.
Like one post. I mean, and I think there is. I mean, there's usually a make post, right? So like that's like 6.1, but if there could be one and maybe in the forums, and it could be like, got problems, put them here, and then those could be like kind of just condensed into one place and like one link, and then everyone could, that could be like a handy kind of way to contain it instead of just having like it spread out.
Yeah, I think it's just based on
I
comfort
mean, that's
level.
the people who I'll be sharing it with, and can encourage people to put their feedback there. So it's directed.
Yeah, in general, like this is where like alpha beta RC, so this is pre-release, and then generally afterwards, from what I understand, just posting in the general like version. Like here, let's see if I can have like sorry, I'm trying to pull up the list. But yes, one of the things I actually realized in talking and hearing you say this is like, I wonder if we put this in the news post. Like I know we do it for RCs and betas, but I don't actually know. I can't think of off the top of my head what the final announcement looks like and whether we add a link there as well. So I'll follow up with marketing.
There's so many people who will not do feedback on a release candidate. They just won't, because it requires extra steps. So like, and everyone's like, yay, 6.1. And you guys are like, we're done. And then everyone else is like, we're starting.
No, we gotta,
Well, I know you're not done, but like, you're like, okay, whew. And then everyone's like, oh, it's our first look at this. And, I mean, if we were getting crazy, it could even be on the page, on the update page. It'd be wild. But, that'd be cool too.
It would be really cool. Yeah, I agree. I'll follow up on make sure or see if we can get it in the news post at least. I just can't remember if we do it.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for raising that. That's great. Sweet. I will see you all in Slack and don't be shy. And thank you so much for everything you all are each doing to stay tuned.
Good seeing all you.
Learn. Bye.
Thanks for letting me pop in.
Good luck.